Hello, and welcome to today's session, Future of Floorplanning. Before we start, let's review a few items to help you participate in this event. Here's a simple attendee interface or control panel. You should see something like this on your own computer in the upper left corner. You may submit text questions by typing into the chat pane of your control panel. Questions may be sent at any time. We will collect these and address them at the end of today's presentation. When submitting your questions, please indicate if you would like the question directed to a specific panelist or to all. A recording of the presentation will be available on demand through the convention portal within 48 hours. Now, I would like to introduce Shaun Petersen, Interim Executive Vice President of NIADA.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to our session entitled The Future of Floorplanning. When the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, one of the first and most frequent questions we received from dealers all across the country is, what's going to happen to my floor plan lines? How's this going to affect my ability to buy inventory? I need cash. What's going to happen? And we were very fortunate throughout the initial stages of the pandemic to work very closely with the two gentlemen that are with us today and their staffs. And that has continued throughout the pandemic. And as we talk about the future of floor planning, we want to really focus on what to expect heading into the new year. You know, what was in the past is in the past, and we're going to look towards the future. And we all have visions of grandeur. We expect great things to happen, but we're fortunate today to be joined by Jim Money with AFC and Scott Maybee with NextGear Capital. So enough from me. Let me have them introduce themselves to you, give you a little bit about their background, and then I'm going to pick their brain and have them share some expertise with all of you today. So Jim, let me start with you.
Sure. Like you said, my name's Jim Money. I've been with AFC for a little over 21 years. Most of the time in a finance role, and since June of 16 as the president of the company. And then before that, I did a little stint as a CFO in a toy and game company. I worked in the transportation business. I worked for a company called Anthem in the insurance business, and public accounting and a few other things. But have really found my home here within Car Global at AFC.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Jim. We're excited to be able to partner with you and appreciate all that you do for us and for our dealers. Scott.
Yeah, so my name is Scott Maybee. I'm the president of NextGear Capital. Been with NextGear for, my gosh, coming up on 1 year. My stint, out of college started with Nissan. So I worked for Nissan for several years, mostly on the franchise side, and then had an opportunity to go run an auction up in Minnesota. And that's really where I fell in love with the independent dealer, just being able to see all of the many hats that they wear on a daily basis. And then was really blessed to get this opportunity in the fall of 2019. My background's on the financial services side, and then to get an opportunity to work with independent dealers, it was a match made in heaven. So looking forward to the discussion.
Well, thanks for joining us, Scott. Likewise, we're glad to have you as part of the NextGear team, and appreciate all that you have done and all that NextGear Capital has done to work with NIADA and our dealers throughout the course of the last year.
Sure.
So as I mentioned, one of the things that we heard repeatedly from dealers is they need three things during the course of this pandemic. One is customers, need people to buy my cars. Two is I need cars. And then three is I need cash to buy the cars, or I need cash to help my customers buy the cars, whatever the case may be. So we want to focus today's discussion on that idea of the cash. What do the dealers need to think about moving forward in the floor plan space? So let me start with this question, and Jim, let me have you kick it off, and Scott, we'll get your thoughts on it as well. But what has happened in the wholesale auto financing market that affects particularly independent dealers since the pandemic began?
This is going to sound a little strange, Shaun. I feel like a large chunk of the auto financing piece post-pandemic almost feels very business as usual. Like, you know, we're loaning money. As dealers need additional money, we're stepping in and helping them. So nothing's really changed there. I think what's really been of impact for these guys and gals through the pandemic has been the other stuff that's disrupted their world, and some of that is, you know, there's a digital transformation that's going on out there, and it's changing the way they have to think about how they source their product. So that's a challenge in itself right there that they're facing that normally they wouldn't have been facing this time of year. Obviously, the other one that comes right into play is the fact it's inventory, you know, where the pricing is right now. That's a struggle as well. Once again, there's opportunities to soften that possibly with the digital side, but that's really challenging. And the third thing is something that I doubt that any of us ever thought about putting in a phrase. 3 simple words: safe social distancing. You know, you go back to February, none of us knew that phrase at all, you know, and it has changed the dealer's world and thinking about how they make sure that they can create a calmness for their customers so they can continue to do business. But those are the things that really jump out to me that are really impacting the dealers. I think Scott will say that they're doing the same thing as we're doing at AFC. You know, we're open for business and we're listening and we're helping everywhere we can.
Scott, what's your take?
Yeah, Shaun and Jim, you're spot on. I think, you know, when I heard that question just now, it's almost, you know, you want to flip it around and say, what haven't the independent dealers had to deal with? I think what's amazing for me is just the impressive nature that the independent dealer has been able to deal with the unknown. So there's a ton of uncertainty in the market. You know, they're trying to revamp their sales processes to make sure that they're easier to do business with. Jim touched upon this a little bit too. The inventory levels for used cars are at record lows, and you know we're also socially distanced. So you know the support that we have, typically we would be able to be on the dealers' lots, you know, on a daily basis. Now it's a little different. The only thing I would add, most likely to Jim's comments, and you know I would agree with him. We're seeing the same things. It is business as usual for us at this point. But one of the things I've seen the independent dealers do to deal with this pandemic is just partnering up. So partnering with NIADA. You know, Jim and I are business people, but we've even had conversations just about how we can get the independent dealer through this and on the other side. So really a lot of you know, relief to the dealer. And I don't think that would have happened, let's say, even a year ago. Simply because we have a vested interest in making sure the independent dealer is successful, and it's just an impressive industry.
So Scott, you used the term that I circled, uncertainty, because I think we've heard that from dealers quite a bit. There's uncertainty with the economy, there's uncertainty with the election, and certainly I don't want to make this a political discussion, but uncertainty with the next stimulus talk discussions. Is there going to be another package? A lot of uncertainty in their space right now. So given the uncertainty and maybe the current state of the economy, what kind of impact is that uncertainty, state of the economy, et cetera, having on dealers' ability to get floor plan financing?
Yeah, the way I would break that question down is first on the wholesale piece, and then talk a little bit about the retail piece. But on the wholesale side, certainly during April and May, we saw floor plan providers such as ourselves lowering credit lines and trying to de-risk portfolios as much as possible. I can tell you I might not have been on people's annual Christmas card list with making those changes, but we were in a space where, you know, it was uncertain for us as well. If you also look at new lines of credit, were probably scarce during this time for the average independent dealer, simply because no one knew what was going to happen. But as Jim alluded to earlier, it is business as usual. So we're not managing, you know, in a black box. We look at every single dealer that comes to us for floor plan financing. We rate them on, you know, how successful they will be in the industry. And the only change we've made that's different from pre-COVID levels is really requiring bank statements. So cash is king. Love Jim's name, Jim Money, but cash is king here. And so, one of the things that we just want to make sure, dealers are able to show, 2 to 3 months of solid financial, keeping cash in their business. The other thing that I would just touch upon, Shaun, is our success is also part of the retail success. So if there's retail pull-through, it makes the wholesale world a lot easier. We have seen some pullback in the independent space. I'd comment on Wells Fargo, et cetera, to where people are looking at tightening up as we enter the fall. So even though your question was around the wholesale side, I think the retail aspect of making sure that consumers can get access to cash really helps us out in the wholesale side and ultimately the independent dealer.
And I agree with you. There's no better name in finance than money, right? Jim, same question to you. What about all this uncertainty? How's that impacting a dealer's ability to get financed?
I think on surface, I'd just like to say ditto. I think that's probably the easiest, but I agree with Scott. I mean, when the heat of the pandemic was going on, we were trying to figure out the best way to kind of traverse those those rapids, so to speak. And so we did a lot of the same things that they did at NextGear. I mean, we had to lower some lines. I know people weren't happy with that. We did stop the underwriting process for a short period of time, just so we can just try to get acclimated to what is going on out here, because it was like the best of times, and then it became the worst of times the next week. I mean, that fast. And so we were looking at things and making sure that we understood what was going on. Once everything kind of settled down, the dealers that we took and reduced the lines, if they're still in good standing, we took you back up to where you were before, got you back where you needed to be. And we really didn't make any serious changes to anything in our world. It pretty much went back to the pre-COVID model. So we were very happy with the way the dealers navigated these uncharted waters, and they did a great job, and it allowed us just to basically go back to our same process. So we've been open for business, looking at new opportunities, and obviously looking at existing relationships and how can we continue to support them as they start to come out of these troubling times.
So Scott mentioned that there was a couple of slight adjustments, I guess, to underwriting criteria requiring some cash in the bank. Jim, did you guys make any changes to your underwriting processes as a result of the pandemic changes?
Outside, Shaun, of the fact that during the heat of it, think about like April and May, where we were trying to gauge what was going on. We made some tweaks during that period of time, but then we pretty much have gone back to business as usual. At BAU, I know it's not what people want to hear. I mean, we want to look for, is there a magic bullet that you guys have done? And there really isn't. I mean, I've been extremely proud of how these women and men have been able to come through a very, very challenging period in time. And they have surprised a lot of us, and it's allowed us to continue to utilize the same existing underwriting standards that we have been using in the past.
Scott, how about at NextGear? Is there kind of a shift back to the pre-COVID model?
Yeah, so what, Jim alluded to this a little bit, April and May, as you're trying to figure out those rapids and move through, there was a lot of uncertainty on our side. And frankly, we could all pause and say, a new dealer getting into the space in the April timeframe, you just want to maybe dot the I's and cross the T's a little bit on that application. But by June, we understood as best we can a little bit more about what our clients and potential clients were dealing with, and we have returned to pre-COVID levels. What I would share with you is we actually saw in the June, July, and early August timeframe, we actually saw a slightly better credit quality initially. So that was nice to see. I would say over the last probably back half of August and even here in the early part of September, we've kind of leveled off to pre-COVID levels, which is great. And just to put a an exclamation point on Jim's point. Really for us, it just shows how resilient the independent dealer is. The fact that by and large, the independent dealer has been able to navigate their way through this pandemic and actually come out better is just impressive.
Jim, have you guys seen a little better credit quality as well over the course of those, late spring, early summer months?
Yeah, I mean, I think dealers have done all the right things. I mean, they have, with the challenges with the inventory levels, they have right-sized their businesses, and they've taken the right, made some of those difficult choices that they had to make. I mean, they went through the same type of stuff that a lot of businesses went through. They went through their furlough period of time. They probably also went through furloughs that became more permanent in nature. And they right-sized their business as a result of that. And, I believe, their performance levels have really dictated the fact that we're seeing some stronger performance than we would have expected to see at this stage. Because, as you go into an environment that is shut down overnight, you're trying to figure out how this thing comes back to life. You start kind of going through, doomsday scenarios in your head. And worst case scenarios, I mean, my goodness, what's this thing going to look like? And it's shockingly better than I could ever have expected. I mean, it is better than I could expect. And I'm very pleased with our customers and how they perform during this difficult times. I mean, they're superstars.
I'd love to hear that. We'll make sure that they emphasize superstar. That's great. So, Scott, let me throw this question to you to start with. Knowing that things have improved from what you guys are saying, what kind of business fundamentals should dealers focus on now more so than ever as they move forward into the fourth quarter and into 2021 to kind of help them secure and manage their floor plan lines?
Yeah, good question, Shaun. I think for me, it's always going to come down to people and processes. Anyone that's worked at an automotive dealership knows that that's typically what you focus in on. For us, the way we view our world is it is business as usual. So we need to become easier to deal with. We need to become better partners with the independent dealer and make sure that their interactions with us are seamless. So if you focus in on, buying, selling, and running a more efficient business, touch a little bit about the buying. It's more important now to ensure that they're buying correctly for their business and market. This could mean that they're utilizing tools that they didn't before and possibly even buying less than they normally stock. I know it sounds a little strange for a floor plan provider to say that, but sometimes buying less and making sure you're looking at the market and what the market will bear is important. Selling is important, so getting retail eyes on inventory was difficult pre-COVID. Now it's absolutely essential. So unlike franchise dealers, independent dealers have to be really focused in on their marketing and making sure they get the right eyes. So retail advertising is important. And then the name of the game for everyone in this industry right now is just efficiency. Look at the business, cut out any waste, better time management, really spending time with your team members. I've been struck even, working within NextGear. We're doing well from a business perspective, but never lose sight of the fact that you've got people who might report into you that just want to, know that you care. Ask them how their family's doing, things like that. It's always going to be about people in this industry.
Jim, how about you? Same question.
Yeah, a lot of the same stuff that Scott mentioned. I mean, right now, dealers need to remember that sometimes the first loss is the best loss, and not hold on to cars too long. With the way the values have been kind of bouncing around out there. So that's probably a challenge in itself for them. Obviously having not only a healthy turn time, but a healthy sales pattern is paramount. I do agree with Scott that there's probably a lot of dealers that are basically realizing that they don't need to sell the same number of cars that they did in the past. And a lot of that's because they've right-sized their business. They don't look the same. They may have in the past had 20 people working a lot, and today they only have 10. That's all they need. And so they don't need to carry as much product. They don't need to sell as many cars, but they know what they need to make off those cars. So that's a challenge for them. Obviously, there are those individuals who have always been in the physical space. You know, the challenge for them is to kind of help them pivot and start to dip their toe in the digital space, because there's so many more opportunities over there to fund their inventory needs over there. And probably the biggest thing for them is creating efficiencies in the sales process, because they're being forced to be able to have a store where their customers feel really safe and secure being in, that they're not going to have an opportunity to contract something or whatever. So that safe social distancing is probably starting to change up how they go through the sales process. Can they do a little bit more of it online versus in person? And so those are some challenges we're facing.
Let me pause for just a minute here and remind those that are watching the session that if you have questions of either of our panelists, please feel free to type those questions in the chat box. If you want to direct a particular question to one of the specific panelists, please indicate that. We will make sure that the questions get funneled to the panelist and a response to your question as soon after the session is over as we can. So don't be shy and bashful in asking those questions through the chat box. So both of you mentioned that it's critical for dealers to be cognizant of inventory costs, of turn time. Certainly, we're hearing from dealers all across the country that, and I think you both have alluded to this, that sourcing inventory is a challenge on so many levels right now, prices being amongst the top of that. Can you just talk a little bit about what you're seeing as it pertains to price and how that's affecting dealers' inventory lines? Jim, do you want to start with that?
Sure. So this is usually where I put the caveat out there that I usually leave that kind of talk to the experts like Tom Contos, but I'll give you my 2 cents. Obviously, there's a supply issue, and that supply issue is driven by the fact that there was a shutdown in the new car side, and that has translated into a period of time where there were fewer new cars being sold, meaning fewer trade-ins, cars that could maybe make it to the lane. And obviously the franchise guys are probably more apt to keep some of those cars that they normally wouldn't keep in the past. Lease turn-ins are down, residual values are at a place where the consumers are possibly holding on to the cars a little bit longer, meaning fewer cars coming into lanes. And then obviously repo activity is a little bit slow right now. So all those things are creating that supply problem, and we know for a fact that we don't have a demand issue, and as a result, there's a pricing issue right now. And so our customers are trying to figure out how they can traverse those waters. And I think there's a group of people that have always played in the digital space, and there's a group of people that have predominantly just played in the physical space. They like to kick the tires. And this is a great opportunity for some of those folks to maybe pivot a little bit and try some other areas, and they might be able to find out that they can get the product they need, a few states away that they normally wouldn't go to, and they can even stomach the transportation result of that and still make it better off. So there's some really nice tools we have at Car Global, at a section we have on dashboards that kind of shows some of the visualization of some of these trends that are happening in all the 50 states that folks can check out. But obviously, that's probably one of the biggest issues for our customers right now, is finding the product at the right price.
And Scott?
Yeah, Shaun, I think what I would say, I also heed Jim's wisdom. We've got Jonathan Smoke on our side, so I usually leave this question to him. But a couple of things I would just add relative to pricing. I would say, as Jim mentioned, you've got the fact in March, April, and May, by and large, OEMs stopped making cars, because of COVID. So inventory is really down. And so franchise dealers are relying more heavily on used cars to make up for the lack of new car production and sales. And what we've seen thus far is that's largely because they're going to be more aggressive in the lanes and willing to pay more. You can see the independent dealer has been pushed out a little bit from that perspective. So it's been a challenging environment for the independent dealer. But what I've seen, in the latter half of August, and up into mid-September, is softening wholesale prices. So you can see that supply is coming in, demand is still strong. So that's a positive for us, and certainly makes me glad I paid attention in economics class in high school, so I can understand that supply and demand curve.
I'm chuckling because my son and a couple of his friends were sitting at the kitchen table last night working on their high school economics assignment that was due today. So
Right.
I'm glad they're paying attention as well.
Right.
So you both mentioned, dealers needing to, and maybe recommendation is not the right word, but as part of their business fundamentals, ideas surrounding adjusting wholesale strategies. Maybe have you seen independent dealers make some of those adjustments, and what have they looked like over the course of the last couple of months? Scott, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think, higher inventory costs have a huge impact on the independent dealer in general. So as we mentioned, increase in wholesale costs have mostly outpaced increases in retail costs during the pandemic. So we live in the margin pre-COVID. Now, if you look at large independents and even franchise dealers, they're able to make up those reductions in margin through F&I or a service center, whereas many of our small and medium independents really can't. So I think they've had to work extra hard, and as I alluded to earlier, really make sure that they're out there advertising the right way, getting retail eyes on their inventory. The other piece I would just call out relative to flooring, Shaun, is increases in inventory costs could cause credit availability to decrease. So if you look at how we underwrite in normal times. If you look at our portfolio, it's increasing, but by and large, it's due in part because of the transaction price, not necessarily, the count, if you will. So for us, that's where it gets down to the relationship. If dealers want to be able to buy more, contact your account manager and be able to have a conversation to make sure that we're supporting you where needed.
And Jim, what kind of changes have you seen at AFC that independent dealers have implemented?
I think a lot of the stuff that Scott mentioned holds here as well. I'm not sure what more I could add to that subject. I would say that a lot of the challenges on the vehicle value side that might start to eat away at line availability probably hasn't really shown itself as much, at least from my perspective. I'm seeing there's more opportunity for some of these dealers that they've decided that when they sell a car, they don't typically go and buy a car. They go buy an 8/10 of a car, so to speak. So their replacement strategy is a little bit different, and that replacement strategy being different has maintained their ability to stay within their line needs. So that's one thing that I have noticed is that they are kind of right as they continue to right size that business. They're able to continue to work their way through some of these difficult times.
So as a lot of auctions have gone digital for the safe social distancing reasons that Jim's alluded to a couple different times, we've heard from dealers that they've had to get creative in sourcing inventory. So certainly there's a lot of digital tools that are out there, and Car Global and Cox Automotive have those tools, as are others in the market space. But as dealers are really kind of looking at every alternative that they can come up with to source inventory and turning over every loose stone to see what might be underneath, What kind of impact are some of those creative ways having on their ability to manage their floor lines? Jim, do you want to start with that one?
I would say first up, we're really proud of, we have an AFC credit card and it's good at over 1,100, auctions in US and Canada, and that goes beyond physical auctions. So our dealers know that they can use their money anywhere, even if it means outside of the auction channel. We have a thing called non-auction purchases. So if they're getting creative and where they can source their inventory, we can kind of help put a valuation on that so they can get some liquidity back. That's our goal. So we're very, very flexible with our customer, and so I applaud them for being very diligent in their process of how they go about finding the right product at the right price. And they just need to know that we're going to be there behind them to help them, basically as they continue to look for different ways of sourcing their inventory. We're there 100%.
Scott?
Yeah, Shaun, for me, I think Jim alluded to it well. Be flexible. So buy vehicles wherever you can find them. I talk to many dealers, they talk about their honey holes of where they're purchasing vehicles. It might change. So be open to that change and be flexible. I would also just pay attention to the stimulus piece. I think if and when another economic stimulus round comes through, dealers need to be paying close attention to that to adjust, from a market perspective, so that you're in the car for the right amount. And then I'm a big data guy, so you can't improve what you can't measure. So make sure you're using tools that are data driven to provide the best information and recommendations for your business. It's so important right now. Gut feel is important. I'm a gut feel guy too, but I usually use data to kind of, put finer points on things. Jim referred to what we're going through in the COVID environment, almost as maneuvering through rapids. For me, it was, the way I would describe it is, you're in a plane, there's clouds all around you. You don't really know which way things are going to turn. So you have to use the data and the instruments in front of you. So gut feels good in this business. It got a lot of us to where we are today. But I think right now, those that are getting ahead are using the data and the tools to their advantage.
So as your entities are socially safe distancing or safe social distancing, probably could go either way, I guess. What specifically is NextGear doing? Scott, we'll start with you, and then Jim, AFC. What specifically are you all doing in your companies to connect with your customers in that safe social distancing way?
Yeah, so this is this is a complex environment, but it's always going to be a relationship-driven business. So it has altered the way we interact with our clients for sure, but we continue to seek out the best ways to communicate with them, whether virtually or in person, where we're allowed. I talked a little bit about Jonathan Smoke. He's got some information that's able to be provided to us, to our field team, to where we know what environments it's safe to actually visit the dealer and where it's not safe to visit the dealer. Safety is always going to be number one for us. It's important that we're out there for our clients and to be able to give them the support that they need, but safety is going to be number one. And then the honest aspect to it too, Shaun, is we were probably pre-COVID, we had largely been, maybe I'd call them performance managers. And now we're shifting the paradigm to really, portfolio managers, really wanting to get back out to the auctions, get back out to the dealers and meet them where they're at. So, as we start to morph into that, even pre-COVID, we had started to change that way because we know having a conversation with a dealer at their place of business is really priceless.
Thanks, Scott. Jim?
So agree with Scott. I mean, everything is about keeping everyone safe. That's first thing, you know, keeping our employees safe and then keeping our customers safe. And so, you know, we've done some things to utilize tools like Zoom. Like, I think a lot of people didn't know what Zoom was before. Now they definitely know what Zoom is, Microsoft Teams, even FaceTime. So anything we can create a conversation where we're not next to each other and we can at least visually converse with each other. So it's as best we can to having a normal conversation. You know, we have locations out in the field. So we do curbside delivery of titles and things like that, as well as cursory title drop-offs, things like that. So we're able to do things like that. I would tell you, one of the things that I was really proud of our team was it was in April and May. We talked to roughly 90% of our customers, and those calls that we had were really check-in calls of just like, how are you doing? Are you all okay? I mean, it was really just making sure that they knew that we were there for them when things started to change, but we really wanted to make sure that they were doing okay and really have an understanding of how they were dealing with all this massive change. And we talked to them a number of times over those few months, and I think that was a great way of kind of reminding our people that this business is more than transactions. This business is relationships, and that's what it's all about. And I'm very, very, very proud of what our folks did.
So Jim, let me start this question with you. What reaction would you have to independent dealers that, you know, change is hard? I'll be the first to admit that for my own personal self. You know, change is hard, and shifting from a you know, primarily handshake, face-to-face kind of world into these more digital realities has been a challenge for some. So what kind of what would you say to the dealer that's reluctant to get deeper into that space, especially as we move forward into the last quarter and into 2021?
Well, this might sound a little strange, but I'm a big fan of a guy by the name of Pat Lencioni. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pat. He's a leadership guru. He has a podcast called At the Table, and it was a couple months ago. He had a podcast that was, the basis of it was an old Chinese proverb that went something like this. You know, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Second best time is today. So, you know, folks can sit back and hope that things go back to normal, and they can say, I'm going to wait it out. I don't want to deal with this shift in our world that's going on digital. I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to wait, because I think things will change in the future, and that may happen. That may happen. But there are some people that are realized that maybe it's just time for me to plant a tree today, and I just need to try it. Why not dip my toe into it? You know, and if there's any dealers out there that are they're a little apprehensive about it, all I can say is reach out to your AFC personnel, have a talk, and we'll put you in contact with folks at ADESA, and they can talk to you about Simulcast Plus. We'll put you in contact with Trade Rep. We can put you in touch with the people who can answer the questions that are really burning in your mind about why I don't want to go there. Let's talk to some folks about, you know, what opportunities might be there. And I think at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to try it. Just try it in a small way. See if it was that bad of an experience. There are a lot of people that were pre-COVID buying digitally, you know. So and I think they were onto something. So change can be a little difficult, and I understand that, Shaun. Change can be difficult, but sometimes you got to plant that tree, and then if it doesn't work for you, just rip the tree out of the ground. That's fine.
Everybody needs firewood. Scott?
Yeah, I think to your point earlier, Shaun, I do not come from this question, you know, with any knowledge other than, you know, I struggle even changing my Outlook settings, you know, so I have to get through it from an email perspective. But anyone ever heard of Blockbuster, you know, Sears, Nokia, Polaroid? These are examples of business that were doing really well but failed because of an unwillingness to adapt. So for us, what I find, dealers should really understand where commerce is in general. If you look at Amazon and even looking at Walmart, people are moving more towards online. And frankly, I'm not trying to come across too abrupt here, but I think COVID really pushed us all a few more years down the road, in general. So I think we knew we were going to get to this point. We've just sped up the process a little bit. So I would just encourage dealers to adapt. And I would also say, similar to Jim, you've got a team of people that are ready, willing, and able to help you. You're not alone in this change. Certainly, your NextGear Capital rep can help you out, but you've got a plethora of people across this industry, not only from NIADA and other aspects. So please don't think you're alone in this. There's ample help, and really you shouldn't feel like it's a sales aspect. There's a lot of things and tools that frankly wouldn't cost you a penny that you have access to. So don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask for some help.
So Scott, let me start this with you. Looking back, and again, we want this to be a forward-looking thing, of course, but looking back on where things have come since March of this year, what surprised you the most about the independent dealers and how they've reacted to the pandemic, particularly as it pertains to managing and handling their floor lines?
Yeah, I think, and I want to be careful because this could be seen by some of my previous franchise clients, but just it didn't really surprise me. It just showed me how impressive the independent dealer has been. I think the reason they've been able to get through pretty untouched, to be honest, is they have their tentacles in all aspects of the dealership. So they're the receptionist, they're the front end person, they're the sales manager, they're the F&I manager, they're even the maintenance manager, and so they have their finger on the pulse of every aspect of the business, and just really proud of them. I know in early times there were some naysayers in the industry thinking that frankly a lot of independent dealers wouldn't be around right now, and certainly those that are inside the independent space were bullish on where we would be, and frankly we proved the naysayers wrong, and all the independent dealers proved the naysayers wrong. So for us, it's an aspect of us. We want to be business as usual. We know there's so much change in the dealerships that we don't want to upset the apple cart. We need to be easier to do business with, and that's really our selling point, which is the ease of doing business, so that the dealer can focus in on other areas and aspects of their dealership.
Jim?
Yeah, I feel like Scott had some of my notes.
Yeah.
So I agree 100% with Scott. I mean, I applaud these women and men. These independent used car dealers are a resilient bunch. They are entrepreneurs, all the way. And the actions that they had to take in a very, very short period of time to make sure that they could fight another day, and a lot of that is because they understand the gamut of their business, because they do all the work, and they are going to do whatever it takes to be able to fight another day. And they had to make a lot of tough choices during a short contracted period of time. And they made a lot of the right choices. And our goal is to help them as much as we can and try to stay out of their way. Let them do what they do really well, which is they figure out ways to go about sourcing their inventory in very, very unique ways. They figure it out. If I can't find it over here, I'm going to find a place I can get it. And we get out of their way and we let them do that. And then at the same time, they start to figure out different ways of how they conduct the sales side of their business. I mean, they're the champions of being able to pivot. I mean, they've done an incredible job, and I applaud each and every one of them. I mean, they have really, they have surprised a lot of people. They didn't surprise me, but you know, I had a little bit of the fingers crossed. I'm like, don't let me down, and they came through, and I think, you imagine that V. It's what happened to us, a V, and it came out as a V, and now it's kind of like in a protracted U a little bit. But I think that's just the right sizing of the world right now. But I've been really, really proud of these men and women.
Outstanding. Thank you both. So it's not too late to ask that question. Go to the chat box. You can get your last minute questions in for both Jim and Scott. We'll get those answers turned around as quickly after the session as we can. So we're up against the clock here, but let me again, as we focus to next year, let me close with this question, and I'll start with you, Jim, and then Scott will have you have the last word, so to speak. So as we turn the calendar to 2021, and obviously there's going to be a lot of things between now and January, dare I say January 20th of 2021. We'll just kind of tag the presidential inauguration in there. So a lot of things that will happen between now and then. What changes do you think you see for the independent dealer as the calendar turns into 2021 and they hit the ground running into the first quarter of next year?
Yeah, I think the digital transformation is not done. I think they're gonna see a lot more of that. I know from speaking from the eye, I know we're really focused on those things, and it's how can we continue to help improve the customer experience. So hopefully we're going to be there to help them, kind of navigate the waters into 21. So that's one of the things, and I see the digital transformations, internally from our organization even goes to the employee side, and how do I make the experience better for my employee? And I think that even can kind of go back to the dealers as well. How do I make sure that my employees are having a good experience in the world we currently live in? I think they're going to have to act fast. I think they're going to continue to pivot in a quick manner. And then I think that probably a big chunk of it's going to be really thinking about how they connect with their customers in different ways. I mean, I think that's paramount. I know it's paramount for us.
Thanks, Jim. Scott?
Yeah, I was glad Jim had the first crack at this one, because there's a lot of unknowns, and I certainly don't have all the answers, but a couple of questions I think about. No one wants to touch it, but who our president's going to be in 2021, I think that's going to impact the independent dealer. Where does the economy and consumer confidence go? I think that's something we're taking a look at. Will new car product return to a steady volume? So are we going to see, factories producing like they were pre-COVID? What's going to happen to rental inventories? I think those are things we're keeping an eye on. Jim mentioned this earlier, lease turn-ins. So lease turn-ins drive a lot of business our way. So what are we going to see from a lease turn-in perspective? But what I would just couch on three things to end on this question. What we feel comfortable with is more technology solutions are coming. So industry challenges will drive this innovation. Don't fear it, embrace it. We talked a little bit about that earlier from a change perspective. I am not the be all and know all within change, but absolutely embrace the change. And I think you'll see that dealerships that are able to move more comfortably through that will come out on the other side ahead. Digital retailing is going to be the future. Jim and I both know that. We work at different companies, but we know digital retailing is here to stay. Consumers are demanding mostly digital, faster experience in car buying. You look at, millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, they're more comfortable from a digital retailing perspective. And then last, we are in the floor plan financing industry. I would simply say use your cash flow on functions that propel your business. So a little bit of what I alluded to earlier. Spend a decent amount of money on advertising. Make sure you get those eyes on your units. Look at your software, see if there's room to upgrade there, and then reconditioning. Spend some money on reconditioning to make sure that your car is frontline ready, and you can provide your client a top level experience as well. So thanks, Shaun.
Well, it has been a privilege and an honor to have these two great leaders from these two great companies here to share their experience and expertise with you. What I heard both of them say was, we're as close to business as usual as we can. So for what does that mean for dealers? There's cash available for you. I would encourage each of you to take some time and go visit the Cox Automotive and Car Global booths in the virtual expo hall and have a discussion and see if there's an opportunity for you to get some help in acquiring inventory, get some lines of credit for these fine companies. So on behalf of all of us at NIADA, Jim and Scott, thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience and expertise with us today. I'll turn it back over to our session moderator.
Thank you, Shaun, and to everyone in attendance today. That's all the time we have for today. We will compile any unanswered questions submitted, and the presenters will respond directly. Once you leave today's presentation, you will receive a survey on the presentation. We appreciate your time in providing us with valuable feedback. To attend another session, please return to the convention agenda and select the link to log into the next session. On-demand content is available at your convenience in the on-demand section of the convention website. On behalf of NIADA and our presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.